Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. It's from a woman. She is 54 years old, a former model, and she shares her story how she completely ruined her relationship with her fiance and father of her son many years ago because of her attitude, her high and mighty attitude back in the days when she was a high in-demand model. You're going to see in the story, guys, that her fiance back then was a guy on the rise, a guy on his grind, very successful banker, worked for a big, well-known bank, and then went to a smaller boutique operation and was making a ton of money. And when you're going to see when she had their kid, he had certain things he wanted in place for his future wife and mother of his child, like no more modeling and promotions at clubs and other things like this. And her, being in her late 20s, in her prime, was not having it. And she had a very high mighty attitude, like I mentioned before, and completely ruined the whole thing. And now here we are in the future where she's alone, no money, no one, and is extremely regretful of what she did back then when she thought she was the queen. Because you're going to see in the story, guys, and I talk about this all the time, you know, when it comes to looks, if looks is the only card you have to play, it's a very stupid hand, because looks are a depreciating asset, because eventually looks are going to fade. And if all you have is your looks and there's nothing else about your personality that's attractive or appealing or anything like that, you're going to end up alone and without a whole lot going on in your life. Okay? And the problem is that a lot of gals, especially nowadays, even ones that don't have any looks, have the high and mighty attitude, like they're worth everything and deserve everything. Extremely narcissistic. You know how the gals are nowadays. It's one thing if you have models thinking that in their 20s, because yeah, they can get plenty of dudes, but just average gals with that attitude now. And what's going to happen down the road? They're going to end up like this, alone, with no guy that wants them and full of regret. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys are thinking, well, so what? That's what they deserve. And you know what? There's an absolute lot of truth to that. Because how many stories have I done, guys, where these guys, these good men, get in relationships or even marry women like this with the narcissistic attitude, I deserve anything, no one's going to tell me what to do, you get the point, and they treat their guy like crap, they cheat on him, demand open relationships, they sabotage the whole thing, leave the guy broken, or they monkey branch to another guy, they ditch their good guy for another guy because they think they deserve better, and what happens? Eventually, that's that. And their looks fade, and that's the end of it. And for a lot of guys out there that have been burned, you appreciate stories like this because in a way it's like payback. And karma's a bitch. And eventually you're going to get what you deserve. So doing this story for the guys to show you guys. Excuse me, guys. It's morning. My throat's I got that morning throat thing going on here. For you guys that have been burned, you're going to see exactly one day you will have the last laugh. And also for any maybe gals watching this might be a warning to the young gals. I wouldn't quite have that high mighty attitude if your only card to play is your looks, because it will fade in time. I mean, there's the saying, and I say it quite often, it's some people either find it hilarious or hate it, that men age like Sean Connery and women age like Sean Connery. You can have a guy that can be a lot older and still look damn good, but a woman that same age range, no way, no comparison. All right, because it is what it is. I mean, just the other day, I'm going to mention this real quick before I get into the story. The other day, I was looking at one of my streaming, it was Netflix or Amazon Prime or something. Some movie came out, because there's always advertisements on your TV about that, with George Clooney and Julia Roberts. Okay, it just came out. Some chick flick. And I look at it, and immediately I see George. And I'm thinking, George looks pretty damn good for his age, because I know he's in his 60s. I don't know how old at the time. He looks pretty damn good. And I look at Julia Roberts, and I was like, eeh, she doesn't look good. And so I Googled, how old is George Clooney? He's 66 now. So he's probably 65 when the film was being done. I Googled Julia Roberts. She's 55. More than a decade younger than him, and still, he looks better than her. So, again, for the gals, you may look fantastic in your 20s, maybe even 30s, but if you're going to have the high and mighty attitude and treat guys like crap and dismiss them, and whether it being single in relationships, because you're so attractive, well, guess what? Your looks are going to fade. And if that's the only card you have to play, you're going to be in deep shit later in life. So, that being said, I'm going to go into the story here. And I will say this. This lady had a lot of guts to write in her story and to share it with this crowd. So I appreciate her doing that. It takes guts. So it starts off, she says, "Hello. I think your viewers of both genders should hear my story, and I hope it resonates. I am a 54-year-old woman, and I am realizing now just how unattainable, especially to a woman like me, that my ex-fiance, age 55, is now, and it fills me with such a burning regret." Unattainable, meaning he's 55 and wealthy, and he can get women half his age, which you're going to see, but you can't get that guy. My ex-fiance and I have a 25-year-old son together. I was 29 and he was 30 when our son was born. We were engaged before I got pregnant. However, we never made it down the aisle, and I blame myself. Well, I respect that you are taking blame and accountability for your actions back then. Some people never do that. At age 30, my fiance was working for a private equity firm. He grew up blue collar in Brooklyn, but went to an Ivy League school and got a job in banking right out of college. By 25 years old, he went from his Goldman Sachs to a lucrative private equity firm, and 5 years later, he was making over $1 million a year. That is freaking awesome. Good for him. 30 years old, making $1 million a year, and this is obviously decades ago. We rented a $12,000 a month loft in Tribeca, and he was flipping a large sprawling Victorian in Vermont that we were both very proud of. I was a model and a photographer that he'd sponsor any creative project I wanted to do, no questions asked. Late 20s, so she's been a model throughout her 20s, probably in her late teens too. In demand, obviously hot. Watch this. However, after our son was born, from age 29 through 31, I had a phase of insanity. Define insanity. Probably, I'm turning 30. Oh shit, I need to convince myself I'm still hot in demand. Because we all know 30 is that number that women fear. Because they know regardless, once there's that 30, number one, nature will take its course. And also, guys are less interested. They got to be reassured that they're still hot and got it. I was a free spirit. We all know what that means. And my career as a commercial model, even though it never allowed me to live without roommates, further reinforced my belief that it should be about life on my terms and my terms only, and anything else was an insult. Her career as a commercial model made her realize that my belief that life is on my terms, my way or the highway. Now, why would she think that? Probably because at that time, all through her 20s, had guys throwing themselves at her. She could get pretty much any dude she wanted, hence the guys making $1 million a year, right? And I can do what I want, say what I want, and no one's going to tell me what to do, even though I'm now a mother. And a mother should behave in a certain way, or should stop behaving in ways they did when they were younger once they become a mom. But oh no. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. Well, watch how this comes back to bite her in the ass. Starting when I was 29 through 31, I got it in my head that my fiance was stifling me. He did not want me going out to model events or promoting products at nightclubs anymore. I was insulted when his sticking point usually came back to the nightclub thing. My friends and my mom and her friends, who were basically the exact Studio 54 very loved demographic, all called him controlling. I cut off guy friends who disagreed with that. So, again, they're engaged. She's going to be his wife. She's a mother now, and he does not want his future wife and mother of their son going to clubs, knowing darn well what goes on at clubs, amongst many other things that he doesn't want have going on for his future wife. This is reasonable. But at the time, no man's going to tell me what to do. And her friends and her mother are all reinforcing that viewpoint. Her friends and her mother, what do they sound like? Carousel riders. This is why I tell you guys, pay attention who your girl hangs out with, who her friends are, her family, because they're going to influence her. Right here. My therapist kept feeding me lines like, you need to tell him to communicate more. I think I hope internally the whole just communicate line would make him break down and apologize for being controlling chauvinistic pig. He's not being a controlling chauvinistic pig. He doesn't want his mother of his child out in clubs where drugs and Lord knows what else is going on, amongst many other things. He wants his wife and mother to tone it down a bit. He still obviously was cool with you modeling, but there were certain conditions. Meanwhile, I thought I had beat aging because after my 30th birthday, I looked in the mirror and thought I looked the same as I always did. Honey, I can tell you right now, you did not look the same in that mirror at 30 years old like you did when you were 21. I'm sure you look damn good. And you got damn good looking women in their 30s, 40s, hell, even their 50s. But it's not the same as their prime of the late teens and 20s. But this shows you what she thought about herself. That men were still eyeing me on the street and offering to buy drinks for me. That I was still being ushered into exclusive nightclubs, and my agent hadn't dropped me from my agency. I started picking fights with my fiance, saying he worked 80 hours a week, and that he found other women attractive, and that he was probably cheating on me, and that was why he didn't want me going out to the nightclubs. No, she said picking fights. What I tell you guys about gals starting drama. And watch what happens. Oh, and by the way, yes, he finds other women attractive. It doesn't mean he's going to hook up with them. All guys go anywhere and find women attractive. It doesn't mean they're going to go pick them up or hook up with them, especially guys that are married. But that was used as an excuse to pick a fight. After these long fights, he'd break down and admit that he does find other women attractive sometimes, but reiterates he never acts on it. I knew he was not cheating, but him admitting his attraction to other women became my burning fire to justify my actions. In other words, I'm going to twist around his words to create drama and get my way. He was being honest, saying, yes, I find other women attractive, but I'm not going to hook up with them. I'm not going to cheat. And I believe that. He said he works hard to support me and our kid, and I took that as him holding his financial superiority over me. You're just digging your own grave. I know you recognize this now, and again, I respect that you had the guts to write this in, but see the arrogance? And this is why guys have no pity towards women that behave this way when they're older and life comes back to life returns what they dished out in the world. Good man here. All he wants you to do is just scale it back. You're a mom now. You're going to be a wife. No more of this other shit that you did in your 20s. Oh no, he's a bad guy. I counted that many people in Tribeca made over $1 million a year. He asked me to quit my job and study for a real estate license or something. I saw that as further financial control, especially when he says he'd prefer a housewife for the first 5 years of our son's life. So your guy, at 30 years old, is making $1 million a year. And this is obviously decades ago when that $1 million a year, after taxes of course, bought you a hell of a lot more. And he was a guy on the rise. And he's willing to bust his butt for himself because he's an ambitious man, but also take care of his family. He says, hey, you can just raise our kid. End of story. And he's the bad guy here? Women would kill for that. And I know how this story ends here. And his $1 million a year is a drop in the bucket compared to what he's eventually going to be making. And it would have been your life too if you didn't have that attitude back then. I started lying to him about where I was. One night he followed me and I walked out of the nightclub with a guy friend and he lost it and said he wanted the gift he gave me that morning back. He moved out for a while but came back and said he missed me and still wanted to walk down the aisle. Smack! I would have been done with you a long time ago. But that was just me. You could see through his actions, this is a good guy. Why fuck it up? But that attitude, that high and mighty attitude that so many gals have nowadays. We got back together, but I got annoyed at how clingy he was and broke it off. Moving into my own place, I soon began dating another high-powered guy, and my ex-fiance turned our breakup into a friendship, and I got annoyed. Smack! He should not have been just your buddy. Well, Let me backtrack there. You do have a kid together, so you got to get along. But he tried to do the friendship approach. However, one day about a year later, his 35-year-old self began dating a 23-year-old. Aha! Lots of money, man on the grind. He can get women in their early 20s. I told myself I didn't care, but soon my boyfriend started becoming actually abusive. Meaning yelling in my ear, tossing my things out, doing drugs, and punching the wall, and cheating. So you got another guy thinking you could do better. You monkey branched over to another high-powered guy, a Chatter Tyrone type, and he started treating you like the way Chatter Tyrone does. And all of a sudden your ex, who's now dating 20-somethings, looks a whole lot better. Now watch this. I realized at 35 years old that while the men who did one-night stands with me were still high value, the men who wanted serious relationships were either average Joes or had enormous red flags. I spent the next 5 years in a tailspin. I bet you were wishing you stayed with your ex then. The guys who wanted relationships with you at 35 were just average Joes. You didn't want them. But the guys that obviously were higher up on the charts, the top guys, they didn't want relationships because you were 35 at that point. It's just like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm going to have relationships with 25-year-olds. You see how I said if your only card you have to play is your looks, it's a depreciating asset. And in time, you're not going to get anything from that asset. Already, 35, she's having a hard time finding guys who want to have a relationship. They'll hook up with her, but relationships at 35. Then at 40 years old, my ex-fiance and I got back together. So you got a second chance. He told me I still looked to him the way I looked when I was 25. However, he was more assertive than he was 10 years ago, and I refused to drop a guy friend in my life and he ended it with me and said it was for good this time. Your guy gave you a second chance at 40 years old and still looked at you like you were when you're 25. You had it made. If you just lost the edge, but he said, hey, I don't want you hanging out with other dudes. Again, I don't blame him. And also given your track record, and you blew it. And he said, that's it, I'm done forever. You got a second chance here. In fact, this is the third chance because you guys, there was the first breakup, then you got back together a second time. Now this. High and mighty attitude. I apologized profusely for a year, and he accepted but refused to take me back. I don't blame him. I wouldn't have taken you back either. You had chances. There's a point when a guy is done, and when he is done, he is done. Now flash forward another 14 years. He has spent those years casually dating with women mostly under the age of 30. He started his own firm, and his income skyrocketed, and has homes all over the world, and knows many politicians and celebrities on a first-name basis. Dating 20-somethings all those years, starting his own business, making a fortune, knowing celebrities and politicians, first-name basis. All you had to do was just realize, hey, you know what? I'm not the God's gift to the world. My looks are going to fade. Get an attitude adjustment. Be a good wife and mother. Not do that single shit when you're a mom and wife. And that would be your life now. I tried many things to squash the regret and envy towards these women. I told myself he was still obsessed with me when he gave me advice, even though he only did it when the matter concerned our son. You're trying to convince yourself back then now he's obsessed with you? This is just the ego and the narcissism back then. I mean, good Lord. He put his foot down on legal matters, and my friends were shocked at how relatively little child support he paid, while also making sure our son was materially provided for, by sending many payments directly to the sources and making me justify why I needed X amount and for what. So in other words, instead of just a blank check, pretty much he was sending it to whatever things were needed, whether school or whatever, because they didn't trust sending big amounts of money. I had to live in a more middle-class accommodations away from Manhattan, but when I went there, I'd see him with a young woman who always seemed enamored at his presence. Well, if you were obviously making a lot of money as a model, what happened to that money? I'm going to probably guess that during that time period when You were young and thought it would last forever. That I was being pissed away on bullshit. Now he just announced his engagement to a 24-year-old. I really want to hate this woman, and apparently after doing some digging into my ex, is the only man she's ever been with. They've been dating for a little over 2 years, and after meeting her, it finally hit home that I have been replaced forever. So he's 55 years old, and he's marrying a 24-year-old. Now, I'm sure he's a great guy and everything, but let's be honest, why is she marrying him? Maybe she loves him. Hey, who knows? But I don't think his wealth is I'm sure she knows very well aware of his wealth. But he's with a 24-year-old. Notice the guy with this type of money and success, he ain't marrying a 54-year-old or a 45-year-old or a 35-year-old. He's marrying a 24-year-old. This guy's like DiCaprio, except DiCaprio would cut him off at 25. She is like a close copy of me when I was that age. Well, I hope she doesn't have the attitude that you had at that age. It actually hurts more that I was prettier, taller, and thinner than her when I was her age, but I'm no longer 24. It also is jarring that while she seems happy with my ex, she acts in a way that always has an underlying message that that says she calculates her actions to make sure they are done out of respect for my ex. She acts in a way where she feels like if she disrespects my ex, she'll be cast aside and replaced. And I look at that and think, where is the guy who would mope around my door and say that he forgave me even after my dismissive actions? Your guy learned. That's why. Notice here, the way she's talking about this guy's girl. This girl knows that if she pisses him off, she's done. Because he can replace her. This guy is so fucking wealthy and such status and knows everybody and easily can get 20-somethings like that. She's not messing around. She's not going to screw it up. This is why I tell you guys, you relationship guys, you need to have the self-confidence and the self-esteem that if anybody treats you badly in life, you walk away. But a lot of people can't do that. And your girl's got to know that if she crosses you, if the line is crossed too much, you're out of there no matter what. Even if you get hit in the divorce financially, she's toast. She's going to think twice about how she treats you. She's going to respect you more. Women cannot love a guy they don't respect. And you can see here, this chick respects him. But she says here, what happened to the guy that used to mope around and act like, sadly, a lot of guys did in the stories I cover? Well, that guy's learned his lesson the hard way. He learned it with you. And he's grown. Hell, maybe he watches my show. Maybe he watches other channels like me. I don't know. At that moment, I realized how unattainable my ex had been, and that I had gotten the sweet, vulnerable guy, and that I could have grown with him, but now he is a stranger. Who runs through life while I barely walk. And yes, who lives a high life now while I live in New Jersey suburb, working 9 to 5, and worrying that if I get sick, I will have no savings. Where discount outlet malls instead of $10,000 handbags is my now normal life, and I live alone with only creeps now that hit on me. I regret it, and realize I had a good thing. It seems like overnight he became something way out of my league when just yesterday I was lounging unkempt in my pajamas next to him with our baby boy. I convinced myself sometimes that he would have cheated on me eventually, but I also know that he had the opportunity to cheat and never did. So that is the end of her story here. And like I said, that was quite a story. And I appreciate that you wrote this in. That takes guts, especially with this audience here. But, you made your bed and now you're lying in it. And you, just like other people, you have to be accountable for your actions. And I know you're regretful now and remorseful and everything, but I can't blame your husband for he wasn't your husband, your fiance, for eventually being done with you. Okay, I can't blame it at all. And he was on the rise, and it sounds like he was a very good guy. Early on, it sounded like he was a typical nice guy where you would put up your BS and he would come back for you, give you a second chance and a third chance, but he became more assertive with time. But I can't blame it all. Early on, when you were the model in your prime, in your late 20s, and you were pregnant, you're now a mother, and you're going to be engaged. He didn't want his future wife and mother of his kid doing certain things like that. And it's not like you need the money, but you got in your head that I'm so high and mighty, and that I'm such a catch, and I'm such demand, that how dare this man tell me what I can do when I can always get all these other guys. And you saw how that worked out. So, to the lady who wrote this in, I do wish you the best. I do. But, you brought this on yourself. I know you know this now. So, hopefully you writing this in may get the message out to some young gals out there to lose the attitude this is going to be you one day. But, you have your son. Your son's 25, and I hope you have a good relationship with him. And look at it like that. But I would not stop dwelling on the past and work on the present and the future. You can have a good life. You can have happiness. And I would simply, look, life ain't over yet. Okay? I would use what you've learned the hard way to improve your present and future. And I hope you have a good relationship with your son. And if you don't, fix that. But the past is the past. You can't change that. But I'm sharing this story to make the point to a lot of guys out there that have been burned really badly by either treated like crap by single women with that high and mighty attitude that you had when you're younger, or guys that have been in relationships and had that girlfriend or fiance or wife that treated them like crap in the relationship. They were good men that just were clueless and weak. And the woman took advantage of them and maybe cheated on them, wanted an open marriage because she knew she had him, or left him high and dry and brokenhearted to monkey branch to somebody better. And then later on down in life, he crawls out of that hole and he's doing well. And she's pretty much, doing terrible because guess what? Her only card she had was her looks, and they fade over time. These are stories these guys like to hear because you can't blame them at all. And you got a whole generation of gals now that are more full of themselves, narcissistic than ever. Thinking thanks to social media and dating apps with all the attention they get, and guys get just treated like shit. That's why so many guys are done with dating and done with relationships. They're like, I'm tired of this bullshit. You can't blame them. And this is going to be the future. I know gals that in their prime, in their 20s, were damn good looking. They were also damn good looking in their 30s and had the high mighty attitude that similar to what you had. And they weren't models, I might add. They were good looking, but they were average chicks. I mean, they were ordinary people. They weren't models, but damn good looking in their prime. And they had such a giant list of requirements for a man to get them. And they were so delusional in their views of themselves that now they're in their 40s. I know a couple, I can think of them right now, in their 40s, and still are upset because guess what? They're not getting the attention from guys anymore. And they're alone. And they don't have a family and don't have kids. And I also know a couple that have resorted to medical science to have kids without a father. You know what I mean by that. I can't think of the term. And that's how it is. So for the young gals out there, understand something. If your looks is the only card you have to play, it's a depreciating asset. You better have something else about your personality. Like I mentioned about Julia Roberts and George Clooney. George looks damn good for 66 years old. Sure, he's wealthy and he has... he can get the best personal trainers and the best chefs to cook and great food and all the other different things to do. But still, at the end of the day, he takes care of himself. Looks damn good for 66 years old. Julia Roberts, 11 years younger, 55, was like, oh, Jesus, when I saw a picture of her. And back decades ago, she was damn good looking. I never thought she was hot or anything, but maybe Julia has good things about her personality. I don't know. But in terms of looks, guys definitely in the long run win, as long as they don't let themselves turn to fat slobs or anything like that. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. I thought it'd be a very entertaining one to share. It shows what happens to some of these types that have that attitude when they're younger. Be sure to comment down below what you think about this, and be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.